Today, we're joined by Kayla Barnes. Kayla, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let's start off with the usual question. So far today, it is 4:10 here in New York. What unusual, non-negotiable things have you done for your health and performance?
Definitely a non-negotiable is on a daily basis. I have to get movement in. Typically it's some form of strength training, but also, taking walks daily. I try to do it early in the morning to get some sunlight into my eyes, really, improve my circadian rhythm. But exercise for me is an absolute non-negotiable because I call it the ultimate brain booster because it boosts your brain-derived nootropic factor, which will then lead to, boosting neurogenesis or the ability to actually increase and make new neurons. It boosts serotonin, which is the happiness chemical. It boosts dopamine, which is the motivation molecule. So this is something that I absolutely have to do every day, in addition to making sure I follow a brain healthy diet. I just made a post actually today that said, stop counting calories and start counting chemicals. Dr. Amen believes that almost half of the mental health issues in the United States are connected directly to diet. So it's really important. And then, Dr. Mark Hyman says, do you want to be made out of Doritos or do you want to be made out of grass-fed steak and blueberries? So you have to start kind of reframing how you think about food. And instead of just thinking of it something quick or, if you're in a rush, what you're going to grab, you have to think about it as information for your cells and what both your brain and your body are actually made out of. So it's super important to eliminate processed foods, all these added sugars, packaged goods. If it's possible, just completely eliminate it. So those are my two, pretty normal, I would say, but very non-negotiable things that I do every day. Maybe something that's a little bit more abstract is I don't do it every day, but I love to do ozone therapy. So I go in a device. I posted on my story and asked what people thought I was doing. I love the answer that they thought I was teleporting. I wasn't teleporting, but it did definitely look like a unique device. But essentially, ozone therapy has been around for about 150 years, and it's incredible for anti-aging. So it can actually reduce the amount of senescent or zombie cells in your body. It also increases blood flow to the brain. And I'm sure we'll get into more as to why the blood flow to your brain matters. But it's great for increasing blood flow to the brain. And it's also really good for killing different viruses and bacteria and pathogens in the body. So you go into this, what looks like potentially a transport device, but it has ozone, it's a sauna, so it gets your body, taken to a high temperature. It also has PEMF, which is pulsed electromagnetic field, and it has light therapy. So it's a really major, biohacking device, which I love to do on a couple times a week.
What's this called?
It's called an ozone hocket.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it sounds like a cool device that combines all kinds of different modalities into one.
Yeah, and I have an ozone therapy device in my home as well. So I do that. You can either do ear insufflation, you can do rectal insufflation, which sounds, very obscure. So I guess maybe I should have led with that one actually. But it's a really efficient way to kind of get ozone all throughout the body at home, because the Hocket is a device that's typically in more of like a naturopathic medicine facility or something like that.
And I know that ozone therapy is used pretty successfully in a lot of other countries.
Yeah, it is. And we're a bit lagging here in the US, but there are plenty of studies to back its safety. You do want to make sure that you're either doing it under the, the outlook of a physician, or you know what you're doing, because you have to be really careful not to inhale the ozone. But as long as you don't inhale it, you can use it in a variety of different ways.
And why ozone versus something like hyperbaric or even a senolytic compound that might not do all of the same things, but is going to cost a fraction of the price?
Well, I do hyperbaric oxygen therapy a couple times a week as well, which, at the aiming clinics, one of the first prescriptions, if you have a traumatic brain injury, anything of that nature is going to automatically be hyperbaric. And that's because it's incredibly healing. It's one of the best modalities to heal the brain because of the improved blood flow. So exercise can improve blood flow. Some beet compounds can help to improve blood flow. Walking can help to improve blood flow. But hyperbaric is, all of these things like on steroids. So I love to do that as well. But for me, just my current favorite option is the ozone hocket.
So how'd you get started? Where did you get interested in the brain, and what's your background?
Sure. So I've been a bit of a kind of serial entrepreneur. I have a background in nutrition. I studied human sciences and really focused in on nutrition. So I was already on this route, but then I found myself really struggling with a lot of my own cognitive related ailments. I was on ADHD medication for over 10 years. I was finding myself, experiencing brain fog and busy brain. And brain fog is, more so when you can't start thinking. And then busy brain is when you're thinking all over the place. So I was experiencing all these different, cognitive ailments. And I wasn't really finding much resolve when going to Western medicine. And of course, I love doctors and there's certainly a place for them, but I wasn't getting to the root cause of not only my cognitive issues, but I was also having some hive breakouts related to stress. And they would just say, okay, here's a steroid cream. You can take this and move on. And I knew that that wasn't a good option for the long term. It certainly can be effective short term, but I wanted to get to the root cause. So I hired some team of naturopathic doctors, a dietitian, and a nutritionist, and really started to heal my own body from the inside out. And alongside that, with my interest in the brain, I began training under whom, is noted as one of the most renowned brain doctors in the world, Dr. Daniel Amen. And he's really revolutionizing psychiatry because prior to his work with SPECT scans and actually looking at the brain, you would simply take a test, a standardized test. You would answer a series of questions, and then you would be given a diagnosis. And you would be on some sort of medication, whether it be for depression, anxiety, or bipolar disorder, different things that are cognitive ailments. And you would be on a prescription, but you really never knew what was going on. So that's why I really wanted to take a good look under the hood, we can say, or into the skull. And that's what promoted. I think so many health practitioners kind of got launched into this based on their own personal health struggles or health struggles of friends and family. And I'm really the same.
I can relate. That was my entrance into this whole world as well. But before we talk about the world of brain health, you mentioned a word that I'm fascinated by, or I guess a topic, which is root cause medicine, root cause health. What was your experience there? What's your approach?
Yeah, functional medicine, or as we can call it, root cause medicine, it's simply exploding. And, thanks to leaders such as Dr. Hyman, it's really getting a lot of traction and notoriety. And I think that in general, people are so used to not feeling very well. They feel low energy, brain fog. They're kind of just pulling themselves through the day to get home, flip on the TV, eat their dinner, and then try to do the same thing over again. So functional medicine, it's really about optimizing your health. So how can you feel the best, look the best, perform the best that you possibly can? And I love this approach because of course, there's reasons that we need medications, but if you don't need to be on a slew or even one prescription, if you can do it through changes in lifestyle, such as nutrition, such as exercise, such as meditation, then why not at least try to do that first? In the US, we really have this system of sick care where once you feel really bad, you go to the doctor, they sit with you for 10 to 12, maybe 15 minutes, and you walk out with a couple of prescriptions, but no actual path as to how to heal your body. And everyone that I work with and I speak with, and I try to do this as much as I can on social media, is to spread awareness about things that we can make small changes in our daily habits to try to achieve that optimal health that everyone enjoys. Life is so short. It's way too short to be unhappy. It's way too short to be wrecked with anxiety all the time. And it's way too short to not be like bursting with energy every morning, being able to show up, crush a workout at the gym, do everything in life because, we don't have all that much time here. Thankfully, I think we're going to be working on extending, lifespan in general. And there's so many incredible breakthroughs that we're going to be seeing and that we have seen just in the past year with wearable technology and all these different things, but I think it's super important to work with either a functional medicine practitioner or a coach or, coaching company to get to the root cause so that you can feel your best, your brain can work the best, and you're preparing yourself for a long health span, meaning, even if you live to 100 years old, you want to be able to walk around and remember your family members' names and enjoy life until that last day.
Yeah. I don't know about your experience, but when I was studying in my biology classes and neuroscience classes, we were told certain things that were very disempowering. Like once you lose a brain cell, you're doomed. It's not growing back. There's no hope. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but tell me how the science has changed since, I guess, in the last decade.
We've made significant advancements in longevity, health span, optimizing our health, and specifically brain health. Yes, it used to be believed that we could not grow new brain cells, that you could not increase the gray matter in your brain, but that science is now, advanced, and we now know that these things aren't true. So I feel like we have so much power now. I will also say that we are inundated with more toxins and more, hurdles that we have to jump over than ever. But the information at least is there. And these breakthroughs have given us the opportunity to realize that if we want it bad enough, if we're willing to have the discipline to commit to these changes, we can, improve our brain health, improve our body. Just because genetically you have predispositions to certain either diseases or ailments, we now know that has a relatively small percentage, about 10%, studies are saying now that only 10% of your genes are going to determine your overall health outcome. And when it comes to longevity, it's more about 7%. So it's really having to do with how our lifestyles are currently that's going to affect our health in the future.
How does epigenetics factor into that?
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. So the ability to essentially change our gene expression is what epigenetics is. So all of your daily inputs, from the water that you're drinking to the shower water that you're showering in to every single bite of food, that's all affecting your epigenome and your epigenetics. So it's amazing that we have this much power now, over about 90% is going to be able to dictate what actually happens to us later.
You mentioned the physical, but it's also like the mental and the emotional, such as like the thoughts and experiences and traumas and that whole line.
Absolutely. As Dr. Amen says, your body is always listening. So any thought that you have, as maybe far out as this may seem, it creates a chemical reaction within your brain, which then cascades to your body. So if you're on a consistent basis thinking negative thoughts, or you have a lot of fear or anxiety about different things, that has a physical reaction on the body. It can lower your immune system. It can reduce your cardiovascular health. It has a lot of real physical and measurable components to it. That thoughts are so important. That's why I always recommend people to do two things. To practice gratitude daily, because when you have a daily gratitude practice for a minimum of about 21 days, you can actually start to retrain your brain to be more grateful. It sets your mood up to be more positive. And then not only do you make choices differently that will then more positively affect your health, because as we all know, if we're in a good mood and we're feeling very grateful, then we're going to treat our bodies with a lot more respect and a lot more love. So we're going to choose the healthier food option. We're going to be motivated to go to the gym, and we're just going to treat ourselves a lot better. So definitely, I think Dr. Joe Dispenza is also an incredible resource when it comes to brain rewiring. But essentially, if you grew up in a very traumatic, situation, a very traumatic household, which I personally happen to do that exact thing, both of my parents were addicts. And so by the time, when I got older, every single experience that came my way, I addressed it the same way as I did when I was a child. Even though it was a different experience, my reaction was the same. So I had to be very thoughtful, and I had to work really hard to kind of change the way that my brain processed information, because otherwise it's just a finite set of behaviors. So you encounter a situation and you process it the same way, unless you do a lot of different meditation and kind of work through some of those traumas that you've been through.
For people who are in the same boat and they want to get started and rewire their brain, it can be daunting. Like you just mentioned a bunch of different things. Meditation is seen as like this big lifestyle practice that can take your entire day and get frustrating. But what happens after you do it for, say, a couple of weeks? Does it start to become easier?
Absolutely. And it's different for everyone, because it also depends on how much effort you're putting into the meditation. If you're doing it just to get through it, it's most likely not going to become easier. But if you're actually doing your best and being really, really active in the meditation, then absolutely it does get better. And you also start to feel the effects quicker and you feel them longer.
So what are some of the tenets of brain health? Like you mentioned increasing blood flow. Are there other ones as well?
Certainly, brain healthy diet is where it all starts. You have to feed your brain the proper fuel. Also, your peer group is so important. So having positive social connections. And not only is it great for your brain, but it's also been proven to increase the length of your life. So if you are, if you're in a relationship and your partner is very negative or constantly causing you stress, it's really difficult for your brain to be optimized at that point. So definitely brain healthy diet, sleep is so, so important. And, studies show that so many Americans are not getting adequate or proper sleep at night. So it's one thing to just go to bed for 7 to 9 hours, which is recommended, but it's even better if you can use a device, maybe like an Oura Ring or the Whoop strap, to identify whether or not you're getting adequate amounts of deep sleep and REM sleep. Because during these deeper stages of sleep is when something called our lymphatic system, or the cellular waste recycling and cleaning system of our brains, is most active. So it's incredibly important to get good sleep. First, that starts with prioritizing your sleep. You have to care about it. And then you have to set yourself up for success. I recommend the red blue light blockers at night. A really cool room. I keep mine around 65 degrees, no eating, and alcohol is a really big one. I mean, alcohol is not a health food at all. It's very, on studies, we see time and time again that both marijuana and alcohol are actually really detrimental to blood flow in the brain. So I think reducing or eliminating those, especially right before bed, because although a glass of wine may put you into a sleepier stage, it's going to wake you up later in the night, because once the sugar burns off, it's going to spike your glucose, and then you're not going to be getting into those deeper stages of sleep. Sleep has an architecture, essentially. So it goes in about 90-minute phases. So you'll go light, deep, REM, and you'll cycle through those cycles throughout the night. So that's why if you're being woken up in the middle of the night, maybe you have to use the restroom, then you should cut out water a little earlier, because you really want to get extremely deep sleep, great REM sleep, and you want to wake up feeling refreshed. That's very important for the brain.
Yeah. And I can see when I use my self-quantification devices like the Oura Ring or the BioStrap or the Garmin smartwatch even, that when I have some alcohol near bed, I might fall asleep sooner, but it fragments my sleep, leading to overall lower quality of sleep. And especially if I have it too close to bed, then I, like clockwork, will wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, wide awake from the cortisol spike that happens as a result of the blood sugar spike and then dip. Absolutely.
I mean, my Oura Ring, how does your HRV look? Because my Oura Ring, when I have even really one glass of wine, which is rare, but every now and then I will, my HRV is like half the next day, literally cut in half.
Yeah.
So, and as you know, just for everyone in the audience, HRV is essentially a measure of stress on the body. So it's the amount of time in between heartbeats, but it's also a great indicator as to how rested you are, how well you've recovered from physical performance, and how well you've slept. So it's taking all these factors into account. And yes, every single time I have a glass or two of wine, my HRV is cut in half. So for me, it's just not worth it. I have shared quite a few brain spec scans on my Instagram page as well, if you want to kind of actually physically see. Yeah, and people are always very upset. And the same thing with marijuana. But, these are based on thousands, if not tens of thousands of SPECT scan results. So, it's a little bit difficult to argue with the science, although we've had this conditioning that you have to do these things to have fun, but I don't think that to be true. I think you can certainly go out for a nice meal and not have a glass of wine or have one maybe once a month, but it doesn't need to be a part of your daily behaviors.
Yeah. And in New York, there's very much a drinking culture here. And so I get some weird looks when I'm not accompanying the meal with a big glass of whatever drink, but it's doable. And pretty soon people come to realize that they don't need to drink when they're around you also.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of good non-alcoholic options now. There's all these cool new companies. There's a store in New York, I think it's called 3 Spirits, where it's all non-alcoholic options. So even if you want to partake in kind of that social experience, they're loaded with adaptogens, they're loaded with different, plant-based herbs that will give you a little bit of that mood change that you're looking for, a little bit of elevation without the alcohol, and you're going to feel way better the next day.
Yeah. So we've mentioned that increased blood flow is a big one. I'm going to imagine that another important facet of brain health in terms of mechanisms is going to be to reduce inflammation in some sort. Absolutely.
Inflammation in general is really the driver of most chronic disease. And how do we get inflammation in the body? Excessive stress, primarily eating these highly processed packaged foods, too much sugar. These are all really inflammatory foods and behaviors. And if you have inflammation in the body, you have inflammation in the brain. And, anxiety, some forms of depression, all these different cognitive ailments are linked to neuroinflammation. So it's incredibly important to, again, follow that brain healthy diet and lifestyle with exercise, because exercise can help reduce inflammation, meditation, de-stressing, all of these different things, great sleep. It's very crucial to keep inflammation levels down in the body. I'm really proud to say I get my inflammation levels checked about every 6 months, and I have essentially zero inflammation in my body. So what I'm saying, it really, really does work. Have you had your inflammation levels checked?
I was about to ask, what measures of inflammation are these?
Yeah, so I get both the inflammation just generally in my body, which is CRP, and then you can also get the inflammation actually in your arteries, which, especially with what's going on with the current pandemic, I recommend people checking that out, either if they've had the vaccine or had COVID or both. It's just important to stay on top of your cardiac health as well. So I have both of those tested.
What's the second one called?
So essentially it's CRP, but it's for the arteries specifically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't done the second one, so I'll have to give that a shot.
Yeah. There's also a couple of great supplements. There's one that's really interesting called Arterisol. And post, I don't know if you mind me talking about this, but post, having COVID, my levels were elevated. And I took this supplement, and it's made from a natural seaweed, but it was very effective in reducing the levels of inflammation in my arteries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have blood flow, anti-neuroinflammation. Are there any other important facets to focus on?
I think taking care of and improving your gray matter. So things that you really want to take care of this, because Alzheimer's is very prevalent. And I love that we're now looking at aging more so as a disease than just a part of life. We should definitely get into some of the cool things that are going on with longevity. But yes, I think focusing on the gray matter and integrity of your brain is very important. So with that, also being aware of contact sports or things that can actually physically injure the brain. So I know that children children love to play, football, for instance. But the Amen clinics did a massive, study on the brains of NFL players, and concussion after concussion after concussion. And it really, left their brains in a very bad place. So being really careful, even, motorcycles, all these different things, but making sure you don't physically harm the brain. And then I would additionally say, watching out for toxins, because these are some of the big pieces that can really lead to decreased brain health and leave you a lot more susceptible to cognitive decline and different ailments later on. So toxins, meaning, for instance, cleaning supplies are notorious. I don't think many people have any idea of how toxic their cleaning supplies are, because, they're sold on store shelves, so they should be acceptable. But there's an app that I like to use. It's called Think Dirty. Have you heard of it?
I use it.
Yeah, so you just scan the back of your product and it gives you a score. And you want to stay in the green zone, which is, I recommend 0 to 1, but getting rid of all toxic cleaning products in the home, making sure that, your couch is not sprayed with flame retardants, because they kind of ooze chemicals from the carpet, from the couches. Even some toddler and infant clothes can be sprayed with these things. So we have to be really careful about that. But we want to decrease the toxic burden to the brain through all of these different modalities. Also shower water. I feel like a lot of people don't think about that, but there's so many contaminants in water, and you wouldn't want to necessarily drink water from the faucet. So your skin is your largest organ, and all of these different, maybe pharmaceuticals, cysts, all these different products that are in water are then just being absorbed directly into your body, which then are affecting your brain health.
And I've heard a stat that you absorb about like 60% of the molecules, like the chemicals in water that you bathe in, that passes through your skin.
Yeah, because your skin is literally an organ. So it's just sucking it all in. And the last thing I want to talk about is gut health. So we now know that your gut, they call it your second brain. So about 70% of your serotonin is housed in your gut. And more than ever, Americans are suffering with gut dysbiosis or gut imbalance. That can be leaky gut from potentially gluten, but it's mostly because of all these foods and pesticides that we're consuming on a daily basis is really harming or destroying the integrity of our gut. So if our gut is not operating in an optimal capacity, then our brain is not going to be either, because they're directly connected. So the gut health directly influences your brain, just as whatever you eat is going to influence your mood, your energy levels, all this. So I always recommend, if you're going to get only a few tests and in the functional medicine route of things, definitely get a gut test, because everyone wants to go out, grab a probiotic off the shelf. But if that probiotic isn't actually what you need, it could be feeding the wrong bacteria. So it's really important to see exactly where the dysbiosis comes from. If you have leaky gut, what protocol you need to get on to heal that. But if you can get a look at what's truly happening in the gut, that's going to be your number one best way to actually heal it. Otherwise, you're going to waste a lot of money, you're going to waste a lot of time, and you're most likely going to do a lot of things that aren't going to heal the gut the way it should be.
I'm wary of products that are marketed as healthy because they don't harm humans. But when you look into the research behind them, they have deleterious effects on the gut microbiome, because you kill the gut microbiome, you're not going to do too well.
Absolutely. That's why, of course, antibiotics have like a very important role sometimes, but we have to be careful, because they can take out the bad and the good bacteria. So it's really, of course, crucial to fuel your gut in the right way. But if you're having bloating, which, to be honest with you, it's been very normalized, but it's not really a very normal thing. You should not have excessive bloating after eating. And if you are, or you're not able to use the restroom, or you're using the restroom way too many times a day, these are all signs that you really need to look into what's going on with your gut.
And is there a specific, say, zonulin test or something that you prefer to test for leaky gut, or I guess gut health?
Sure. So I would call in, it's more of a functional medicine practitioner level, but there's the GI map by Genova Diagnostics. And then there's also a test called Gut Zoomer. So they're going to give you a really in-depth look. And if there's only one thing that you want to budget for that year or that couple of months, I would say it should be a gut test.
Let's imagine that you're designing a healthy gut starter pack for someone, I think I saw this on your Instagram, what would be in that? I know you've mentioned a couple, and obviously diet is going to be a big one, a clean, healthy diet. But what else goes into that?
Yeah, I think the post you're talking about, I think, was a healthy brain starter pack, but it goes for the gut too. So definitely a diet with a lot of probiotic rich foods like sauerkraut, completely eliminating the pesticides, because these pesticides were developed to kill the insects that are eating the plant, either by ingesting it, or it actually can kind of be input into the crop, and then it kills the plant when the insect bites the plant. So that can be happening in your gut at a microscopic level. So you're having these mini explosions, which is really detrimental to your overall gut integrity and the permeability. So sauerkraut, great healthy foods like that are going to be incredible for gut healing. Definitely a gut test, but also reducing your stress levels. So extreme levels of stress wreak havoc on the gut. So that's where something like meditation, breath work, walks outside are really going to make a big impact.
What are some of the other common things that people do that damage the brain?
Definitely alcohol. And it's very widely accepted. So that's a major one. Marijuana is becoming very popular.
Are you talking about like 5 to 10 drinks or even less than that?
Less than that. I mean, studies show that, 2 drinks a week, even 1 to 2 drinks a week can reduce blood flow to the brain. I think another big one is drinking what I would deem toxic coffee. Do you drink coffee?
Yeah, but I get the beans and they're the fair trade, organic, and I roast them myself. So I try and keep the heat low to prevent acrylamide and other like formation of nasty carcinogens.
Absolutely. So, coffee is like the most, utilized, we can say maybe drug in the United States, definitely nootropic. And people really need to be careful because it's the most heavily sprayed crop with glyphosate in the world. And glyphosate is a known carcinogen. So this toxic load just builds up and up and up when you're having multiple cups of coffee. Also, I'd like to say when it comes to coffee, you should really drink your coffee about 60 minutes to 120 minutes after waking. Because if you drink your coffee the second that you wake up, it's going to stop the natural cortisol and adenosine production. And then you're going to have a crash later in the day. So you want to let your natural levels rise, then have a cup of coffee between 60 and 120 minutes. And I know it's hard. It's even hard for me sometimes still. But you really want to reach for the first thing, but let your body naturally wake up and then have the coffee. But it's extremely important to have organic, lab tested for all molds and mycotoxins, because the amount of coffee we're drinking, if it's toxic, it's really not going to boost your brain health at all. And you also don't want to have too much coffee because it can work as a vasoconstrictor and limit blood flow to the brain. So you just want to have 1 cup of coffee, maybe a cup and a half, and don't have it too late because that's going to impact your sleep later.
My current routine is when I wake up, I have some water and lemon and electrolytes in it, and then I'll go work out. I guess I have my pre-workout before that, but my pre-workout does not contain any caffeine. And then I'll come back and an hour and a half later, I'll sit down and make my coffee, and you get the natural energy boost from the workout. And then you get the steady energy from the coffee. And sometimes I'll combine it with like a healthy fat source for even more like of a steadying effect. But I find that that's a much better approach for me to prevent the crash later in the day.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And, you can really, I like kind of habit stacking too. You talked about going to the gym and then having your coffee. So when people are trying to make the move into changing their lifestyle, it's really important to use habit stacking. So for me in the morning, I use my red light device just on red light while I do my gratitude. Then I do my meditation. Actually, before that, I brush my teeth. I use some coconut oil, do some coconut oil pulling while I do some stretching. Then I go spit it out. But if you can layer things on top of each other and attach them to something that you're already doing, like for instance, in your shower, you're already there. So at the end of it, just turn on cold. Cold thermogenesis is wonderful for strengthening the blood-brain barrier. So just like the gut can have permeability, the brain can also have permeability. Then bacteria and toxins that really shouldn't be entering the brain are being allowed to enter. And ways that you can have increased brain permeability are, again, alcohol, stress, bad foods. But the way to strengthen it, a great way, is cold thermogenesis. So at the end of my shower, for the last minute to 3 minutes, just turn it to ice cold. And it's incredibly energizing. It's great for blood flow too, because it does constrict the blood flow while you're under the cold. But once you get out, it releases and then blood goes everywhere. And it's a really great thing. So stacking these habits is really helpful if you're making a lot of lifestyle changes kind of in a short period of time.
That's great advice. And we did not compare notes about this to begin with, but I do the same thing where I do my gratitude in front of red light in the morning. And then I oil pull while I'm taking a cold shower. So,
yeah. Well, great minds think alike, right?
Yeah. So after you nail the basics, you've gotten all this down, you're doing everything right, you're feeling better. Then how do you go to the next level? Have you experimented with nootropics or anything along those lines?
I do. Yes, I have. I do enjoy nootropics for sure. I love kind of testing out different supplements all the time. There's a couple that I really like. Actually, nicotine, and I want to be really careful when I say this because certainly not smoking, definitely not smoking, but nicotine in some forms, which could be in the form of a Troche with a company called Trochescriptions. Have you ever heard of them?
Yep.
So they have a really unique nootropic, which you essentially take a little blue piece of a brick kind of, and then you put it into your mouth and it releases over time. But I like that a lot. And it has just 1 gram of nicotine. There's also a gum called Lucy. And nicotine is one of the most widely studied nootropics. But of course, again, never in the form of smoking. That is way more detrimental. But I do like that. I'll have a little piece of Lucy gum if I really need to pour on my focus. I also like fasting for focus, intermittent fasting. I do a 24-hour fast once a week, and then I do intermittent fasting daily. I have done up to a 4-day fast. Of course, you really want to be conditioned for that. But there are great benefits that come with autophagy, which is essentially cellular cleaning. So I love that as well. But other nootropics that I like, I think the brand Qualia is really good. They have a lot of unique blends. And then coffee is a major nootropic that I love the taste. I love the experience of making it. I love grinding the beans at home every morning. It smells wonderful. So those are all nootropics that I really like. I'd be curious, what are your favorites?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried all of those. I like them. I started getting some of the raw ingredients in Trochescriptions blue cannatine and making my own and testing to see if I want a little more methylene blue or a little more CBD or a little more or less nicotine, and found my sweet spot is actually pretty close to their doses. I'm a big fan of adaptogens. I use those probably the most often of everything, simply because the tenets of adaptogens are that they have to bring the body back into balance. They have to be safe. I mean, they're basically the plants that evolved alongside humans. And I find that I have fewer side effects when I use those versus some of the stronger synthetic nootropics that I also have played around with. But I'm always testing new things I hear about and read about, and after lots of research, of course.
Yeah, it's fun to do, try different things out. And some companies send me things quite often, and then I really kind of experience on my own to decide what I'm going to recommend and what I'm not. But yeah, in my opinion, though, you have to really focus on the basics, like you said, before you just try to throw a nootropic on everything. Get quality sleep, and then if you do nootropic, then try to go that route. But there are a lot of different biohacking modalities and devices that I own that I like for overall health, recovery, and brain health. So I think PEMF is a really great device. It can help to improve blood flow. It's great for your bone health, and it can also, incorporate some of these different magnetic fields, essentially, but not the bad EMF magnetic fields. And really kind of change your mood. So it can put you into a more calm state. So in the evening hours, I usually do some PEMF just at home, and it can put my brain into a much calmer state that can prepare me for bed a bit better. I also love hydrogen.
A specific wearable for this, or is it like a whole body PEMF device?
So the one that I have at home, it's called the Haleo PEMF, and I really like it because there's different ways PEMF can actually work. You can either lay down on a mat, and it feels very aggressive. Have you done this before?
I haven't, but I've seen it.
It's very aggressive, which if you already have high stress levels, that can actually actually, increase your sympathetic nervous system more, which is not what you want. So that's an option for PEMF. So it'll really drive the fields into your body, which can also be good for reducing inflammation. But the one that I have at home, it's just one coil. It's super convenient. The different ranges are from about 7 minutes to like 22 minutes. And you don't really feel much of anything, but you can feel it after. So yes, that's the Haleo PEMF device. I love them. But the symphonies and the frequencies are essentially layered over top of each other. So it doesn't have to have such an aggressive approach. It's much more nourishing to your parasympathetic nervous system, which is what you want to try to get into as much as we can, but definitely late at night.
Yeah. Do you know, how do the frequencies in the PEMF devices compare to something that, like, in your typical EMF emitting device?
Well, just essentially, I mean, harmful versus not harmful, you know. I'm going to be honest, I don't know the exact science behind what makes it so different. But when I have an at-home EMF reader, and I'm always checking like everything. Even I made a post on AirPods the other day, and people all the way off about it. But so the EMF levels are, basically non-existent with these PEMF devices, but super high on things like AirPods, for instance, or modems, things like that. And that's another thing you want to be super careful with. So at night, I just completely detach my Wi-Fi completely. Anything that's corded and emitting any sort of Bluetooth energy, I remove it from the wall completely so that I'm not having that affect me, at least during my sleeping hours. Yeah. Other times, my wearables, I try to keep them in airplane mode, keep my phone in another room on airplane mode as much as possible. But it's really important that we protect ourselves from these EMFs. Another thing that I think is really cool and that I use, it's called the Hapbee. Have you heard of it?
I have.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. It's using, yet again, another type of PEMF sort of technology or energy technology to give you different moods. So there's a nicotine option for focus. There's a CBD option for calm. And you basically I have it here. It's a little wearable where you just kind of put it around your head, and you can actually wrap it around your head. I usually just put it under my shirt, but that's another really cool way, or brain hack, we can use. There's also something called Brain Tap. Dr. Patrick Porter, he's really wonderful, and Brain Tap can help to put your body into this parasympathetic or state of relaxation so that everything works better. So for instance, if you're taking supplements in the morning and you're super stressed and your body's in a sympathetic state, you're not going to absorb those supplements nearly as much as if your body was in a parasympathetic, a relaxed state. So really anything that you do in terms of nourishment, post-exercise, anything like that, it's a really cool tool to put your brain into a relaxed state.
Yeah, that's a cool one. Even something as simple as just like breathing and taking a second to pause before eating can do something similar. I'm not sure the extent of the effects, but I always do that before I eat, and I feel like I absorb and digest the food better when I do.
You do, absolutely. And making meals a ritual and really an experience is important, because if you're eating on the go or, rushing your meal, you truly won't absorb nutrients as well as you could be. And so I, of course, would never have the TV on. I don't watch computers. I don't look at my phone. I don't do anything while I'm enjoying food. I just enjoy the taste and absorb all the nutrients I can by putting my body into a more relaxed state.
Mm-hmm. And back on the technology side, do you feel that the technologies you just mentioned compare to the actual molecule, like say the caffeine or nicotine mode of them?
To be honest, I do. It's really cool. Sometimes I just take a day off of caffeine completely, which of course has benefits of, letting your body kind of reset from caffeine, because caffeine builds dependency and then you need more to achieve the same effect. So I'll switch out the Hapbee instead a few times a week, and I still feel super energized. So wow. We're going into a really cool, new era with all these at-home devices. And I think, to really improve longevity, these at-home self-diagnostic devices like a CGM. I wore a Dexcom for quite a while, and I'm going to get a levels CGM. But people, many times they might have a banana every morning or something for breakfast, but once you put a CGM on and you see that the banana takes your blood glucose to the stratosphere, you might reconsider that. So everyone is really individual and unique in terms of their glucose response, but keeping stable glucose levels throughout the day is really important for extended longevity, health span, and brain health.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about CGMs on the show because I think it's one of those like technologies that's evolving very quickly now and for use in the healthy population looking to better understand how their body's working. Mm-hmm. And I think that keeping blood sugar stable throughout the day, especially around meals, not having the huge spike, then the crazy valley afterward, it's noticeable in terms of the way you feel afterward when you keep it steady versus let it run wild.
Absolutely. And it really affects your brain health too. If you're constantly spiking and then, crashing your blood sugar, spiking and crashing, it's going to lead to, brain fog. It can lead to many things, but also significantly decreased energy levels throughout the day. So if you're looking to stabilize your energy levels, definitely work on your glucose response and a couple of small hacks. I'm sure you've talked about them before, but either apple cider vinegar around 20 minutes before a meal or taking a walk for 10 minutes after a meal are really effective ways to keep your blood sugar more stable. Also, if you're consuming a meal with carbs, which the brain actually does need sugar to operate optimally, I think you had a question, what is something that people disagree with? And, I love a ketogenic kind of lifestyle and I've done it, but you want to cycle. You don't always want to be in a carb deficit because your body can make glucose through a process called glucogenesis, but it's difficult on your body. It's tough. So you don't want to keep it in that stage all the time. You want to have what I call smart carbs or slower digesting carbs that don't spike your blood sugar. So definitely not packaged goods, but things like barley, things like sweet potatoes that are going to slowly release the energy versus a big impact. But that's definitely a big thing. When you're having a meal, eat the protein and the fat first. And then if you're having a carb, have that after. And the protein and the fat will blunt the carbs glucose response a bit.
There's lots of cool self-experiments you can run with these. And I found that for me, the strongest effectors of my blood glucose were the walk afterward, bar none. It had by far the biggest effect. And then after that, it's another like blood sugar regulating supplement called berberine.
Berberine, yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are taking that kind of in place of metformin, I think. There's like metformin and then there's berberine. So a lot of people are on this metformin, train because it's made for diabetics, I believe, and that can keep the blood glucose level stable. But again, why necessarily take a prescription if you can pretty much do it on your own by wearing a CGM for a month or just, kind of digging through the advice from people like yourself or myself.
Or just going on a quick walk after you eat.
Right, exactly. Just a couple of really important tips.
One other thing around your coffee, do you ever take a break from it? I usually once a quarter, I'll take like a 10 to 14 day break to reset my caffeine tolerance and my adenosine receptors. But when I'm in the early days, when it's hardest, I'll take a analog to caffeine called theacrine. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's similar to caffeine, but it doesn't build tolerance like caffeine does. And as I'm transitioning over in like the first day or so, when it's the hardest, I'll give that a go.
That's a great strategy. I'm actually going to look it up. I haven't heard of it, but yes, that's a wonderful idea because, like I said, it's a very your tolerance has to be increased and increased over time. You get very dependent on it. So definitely doing a couple of, let's say, coffee detoxes. I usually try to do it at least once a week too. So like on Sundays, I'll try to cut it out completely. Yeah. But doing a longer, more extended coffee fast is also really beneficial once a quarter, every couple months, because you want to let your body have a break. And just like you said, let your adenosine and everything kind of regulate and stabilize on its own.
Plus, then when you come back, those first many coffees, you actually feel again rather than just needing it to go about your day.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it takes a lot of willpower, but definitely something.
Yeah. So any hacks to reduce the amount of willpower needed in the beginning, I'm keenly interested in.
I mean, you seem to have a great solution there. You can also drink decaf coffee, the first couple of days, because it still has a tiny bit of caffeine in there, but just not nearly as much. Also, if you want to try, instead of decaf, you could do like a green tea the first couple of days. So it's kind of like a step down process versus just completely jumping off the cliff.
Yeah. And you can really go either way, but going cold turkey is much more painful.
Yeah, exactly.
For those of my audience that are interested in connecting with you, what's the best way of either finding you online or getting a hold of you directly?
I would love if people would check out my Instagram page. It's just my name at Kayla, Kayla Barnes. So Kayla Barnes. And my company website for any coaching. We work with different executives, individuals that are all looking to upgrade their brain health at www.brain-upgraded.com.
And these links will be in the show notes. I like Kayla's Instagram. I think you will as well. One more question before we go on to the rapid fire round.
Yeah.
Imagine that you have a virtual board of directors for your biggest life decisions. These people can be deceased or they can still be with us, but you consult them. They're like your trusted counsel. Who would you choose and why?
How many people?
As many as you feel are necessary.
Okay. Albert Einstein, because he's a genius. David Sinclair, because I just think the world of David. He's, one of the top longevity researchers in the world. I would also have Elon Musk, because I think he's a super innovative thinker. He just looks at everything very differently. I think those would be my top three.
Okay. We'll have to do a round two also to cover the longevity side of things, because that's a whole world that has advanced incredibly even in the last just couple of years.
It's unbelievable. Someone that I'm connected with, his name's Sergey Young. He's a major investor in longevity technologies, longevity companies, and what they have on the horizon is absolutely incredible. And so much of it starts with at-home diagnostics. So we thought it was cool, when we could do the Oura Ring or these different little CGM tests, but, they're working on like breathalyzer tests essentially that can detect cancer like significantly before it even starts. So what we have to look forward to in the future is incredible. I would love to do another longevity specific episode.
Yeah, it's a great time to be alive.
It is.
Okay, on to the rapid fire round. What would you say are the keys to a healthy home environment?
Filtered shower water. I like the Aqua Bliss. Filtered drinking water. I do reverse osmosis and add back in the minerals.
Yep.
Zero toxin cleaning products. So either make your own or get 0 to 1 on the Think Dirty app. A fridge full of really health boosting foods, because that's what you're going to grab, and making sure that you don't have any other toxins on your couch and your carpet and your bedding, any of those things.
Do you focus on lighting or air quality at all?
Absolutely. So I have several air filters in my home. I use Air Doctor. I don't know which one you use, but I use Air Doctor. It's so important. I mean, the quality of the air in the home can be significantly worse than the quality of air in major cities. So making sure you're breathing in really pure air is super important.
And lighting, do you have any particular type you like?
Yeah. So in my bathroom and my actual bedroom, I have red light only. So in the evening hours, let me say that. So it switches from a standard lower, warmer light to red light only, because if you get up to use the restroom in the middle of the night, you don't want to have a big bright light. Also, my room has blackout, curtains. It has the whole 9 yards. So that's really important. But in general, you don't want to have what would be called junk light throughout your home. So you want a softer light that's less, you never want like a fluorescent light in the home.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of incandescent light bulbs myself for that reason.
Yeah, exactly.
What's one thing that you believe that very few people do?
We touched on it already, but that alcohol is not a health food and is not really safe in any capacity, in any amount. Okay.
What do you see on the horizon for the future of brain health?
So many things. I mean, from like nano robots that we can ingest that will go into the brain and like clean things up. And although that sounds incredibly wild, I think, it's already being worked on, and these things are amazing. So I think at-home diagnostics, so devices that can actually read social cues, so eye movement, speech, how quickly you can move your fingers, and then it can give you direction as to, your cognitive decline is starting to happen essentially. So earlier diagnostics and then little tiny robots going into the brain, of course, the world of science opening up so we can actually fully understand the brain, because we know still so little relatively about the brain and how to, cure some of these different diseases like Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm. Kayla, if all the information and knowledge in the world was burning, but you get to save 3 works, it can be works of any form, podcasts, books, lectures, YouTube videos, whatever it be, what would you choose and why?
Can I pick like whole libraries at Harvard and Stanford?
No, that's too much.
Okay. So, I mean, some of George Church's work is incredibly important. I would definitely save some of his work on genetics because we need to know these things. Again, David Sinclair, his work on aging, because it's completely flipping aging upside down and thinking of it more so as a disease that's curable. And I think the last piece of it would probably be some work by Dr. Mark Hyman, some of his podcasts about food as medicine, because it's like the landmark of his practice. And that is so important.
It's such a simple message, but it's so powerful.
I know. And it seems like people hear it, but they are not implementing it. And unfortunately, we see that because we see the health of our country is in dismay, essentially. You know, obesity and type 2 diabetes and depression is just plaguing our country. So I hope that, you know, from listening to podcasts like yours and trying to get as much information you can, people can really start to achieve optimal health and feel the way that they should.
Yeah. What's one thing that your tribe does not know about you?
You know, okay, so I never talk about fashion, but as you can see, I pretty much only exclusively wear black. I don't know if it's a New York thing or what it is, but everything else, I pretty much lay the cards out on the table, from my family history to, you know, struggles in my youth, things like that. I try to be quite transparent, but I don't think anyone knows that I pretty much only wear black. Every now and then I will wear white, but I own 0 pieces of clothing that are color.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. Your Instagram is mostly black and white, but I didn't realize that it carried over your wardrobe as well.
It's all encompassing.
Well, Kayla, do you have any parting thoughts or last minute takeaways from my audience tonight?
I think that's about it. We covered a lot. Again, if you want to kind of look at more what I'm doing, check out my Instagram. But thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been great hosting you, and I'm looking forward to round 2. Thanks so much for your time today.
Absolutely. You too. Have a nice night.
I'm Nick Urban here with Kayla Barnes, signing out from mindbodypeak.com. Have a great week. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.